Without question, the best way to learn how to fly a racing or freestyle drone is in a simulator. And then once you get good, you can have fun racing, multiplayer, working out new freestyle moves that you've never done before. Simulators are awesome, but which is the best simulator for you? That's the question that myself and my co-host, it's Blunty. How you doing there, Blunty?
Good, Joshua. How's it going?
I'm doing good. That is the question that we have been trying to answer.
So we've categorized everything. We've laid everything out into categories for people that we're going to go through to hopefully help you narrow it down when you're making your choices.
Down in the video description, I've got links to the live streams where me and It's Blunty played these simulators as we were preparing for this video. And if you want a little bit more information about how we came to the conclusions we came to, or just sort of a real-time view of what our experience with each of the simulators was like, down in the video description, check out the links. Of course, also, we'll have links to where you can get these simulators if you want to pick one of them up. And the first category I think most people are going to be interested in is the best free simulator, because everybody out there is trying to save a buck.
So the best free simulator in our lineup is going to be Orqa FPV.Skydive. And that may surprise some people who haven't tried the sim. But we actually felt that Orqa was a pretty good kind of entry point into the simulator space for free. They've spent a little bit of time on this, and it seems like maybe they have other interests for this simulator, but that means that players get a nice little set of features here for free that they might otherwise not have in a good little package.
The main thing that I thought stood out about this simulator was that the physics were actually pretty good. I would say the physics on this one were above average compared to all the other ones that we flew. I especially liked the simulation of prop wash oscillation seemed actually very, very accurate.
Yeah, for sure. Also, this provides nice onboarding sessions for new pilots. We'll talk about DRL Simulator a little later, who did this first, but it seems like they're kind of taking from that side of things, and they're kind of adding a lot of ways for a new pilot to get in if they've never even really used a radio before. So they've got options for controller or radio, and they kind of walk you through like what yawing is and what rolling is, and they kind of lock all your other inputs in. Currently, there's 5 levels, but they do seem to be doing regular updates, because when we looked at it on the stream, there were only 4. They've added a new one and revamped an older one, so they are definitely making progress.
Speaking of the levels, I would say that these levels are smaller than some of the other sims we've dealt with. They managed to pack in a lot of variety and a lot of complexity. I never felt really like, oh, there's nothing, I'm out of things to do, but the sheer size of the levels is a little bit limited. The other thing I think that stands out as maybe a little bit of a downside is that the racing. There is racing, but it didn't feel very sort of mature.
All right. Next up, we're going to look at the best sim for multi-GP style racing, or kind of racing in general, is Velocidrone. And that's, Velocidrone's basically kind of, I don't know if you could call it really this, but the industry standard. That's kind of the thing I think about when I think about it, because most of the multi-GP pilots are racing there on the regular to train and learn courses and stuff. A lot of new courses that get made in multi-GP, like the Global Qualifier and similar courses, are made on Velocidrone for people to practice before they come, or to brush up their skills before they go. I feel like it's a well-rounded sim that has a lot of options and has a robust online community for racing.
Yeah, I think there are a few main things that make Velocidrone stand out as one of the best simulators you can get. Certainly the physics are very good, definitely among the best. It's got a lot of variety in what you can do. There's 5-inch quads, there's tiny whoops, there's even a combat mode that you can get where you basically are playing a first-person shooter, but you're flying a quad and trying to shoot each other down. But the thing that really makes Velocidrone stand out, especially if you're interested in multi-GP style racing, is the culture. For whatever reason, all of the top multi-GP racers are practicing in Velocidrone. They're on the multiplayer events. It's just that's where the culture is. And so if you're interested in racing, there's no question that this is the one to get.
So we should also mention that Velocidrone split out a little differently than other sims are. So Velocidrone's base price is going to be $22.89, but one of the downsides for some people is going to be the split out feature set of a lot of the other packs. So, for instance, if you're looking for that combat game mode we talked about, that's around $10.78 US. Freestyle packs for quads and locations is going to be like $6.74. Micro drones is $5.39, which we'll go into a little bit later for its specific feature set. And there's also a Mega Quads pack for $5.39. So it looks like that total price, if you get all the packs that they offer, all the options, is going to come in at $51.19 for your kind of whole package of Velocidrone.
Yeah. Now, you don't have to buy all the packs, but it does certainly have a higher ceiling on the price than any of the other simulators here. Well, Blunty, we talked about the best racing simulator being Velocidrone. What about the best freestyle simulator? And this one's tough because, like, when it comes to racing, sort of the culture, the multiplayer events, the physics are all super important. When it comes to freestyle, I think the most important thing is the level design. A simulator with lots of cool stuff for you to do your freestyle tricks around.
Today, our best sim for freestyle on these cool levels and these neat places and stuff is Uncrashed. Uncrashed is a pretty new sim on the scene, but it seems like it's basically taken a lot of people by storm, or however you want to say it. Basically, a lot of people are hopping on the train, and they really like what Uncrashed has been doing.
Yeah, the big thing that with Uncrashed is that I think these levels that they're using are like they're just purchased from an asset store somewhere. I don't think they're original creations, but I kind of don't care. When you show me a level that looks like the flying cars from The Fifth Element, and I get to fly my drone and flip around these flying cars, I don't care that it's just an asset you pulled from somewhere. It is super, super fun. And the physics aren't too bad either, are they?
No, I think the physics are, I think we'd say, good. I think we said is kind of where our like middle line is. It's like good. So it's like feels good to fly, but it's maybe not like the best thing we've flown. I think one of the biggest issues here, one of the downsides we definitely have to mention is the lack of multiplayer.
Yeah. Some would argue that for freestyle, multiplayer isn't as important as racing, but some people do like to get into a multiplayer room. And like I've done tutorials in Velocidrone where you can spectate another pilot and they do a trick and you do a trick and you take turns watching each other do the trick while you land your quad. It's pretty fun. Or just play a game of quad with a bunch of freestyle pilots. You're not going to be doing any of that with Uncrashed because there isn't any multiplayer.
If you're interested in picking up Uncrashed, it'll cost you $14.99. That kind of brings it near the middle of the pack for a lot of our simulators. We could kind of look at Liftoff as a comparison to that. Liftoff is $20, and we'll take a look at Liftoff a little bit later with a similar feature set.
What if you're interested in racing, but you're not interested in 5-inch quads? You want to focus on tiny whoops and micro quads. Turns out you can't necessarily just take a good 5-inch simulator and scale the physics down to micros. The physics are a little bit different. So in this category, we're going to look at the simulators that are best for racing micros or tiny whoops.
So first up, and our winner in this category is going to be Velocidrone, winning a second category for its micro drones pack specifically. Velocidrone's micro drones pack basically adds a few different small whoops and small other quads, and then also adds some tracks, some locations, and elements for those tracks to race on. And one of the things that really makes it stand out is just the quality of the simulation of the micro drones, in addition to the fact that it's in Velocidrone's environment, which creates already has that wonderful community environment, that multiplayer environment that Velocidrone harbors. So with those two things together, it really provides a great package in this category.
On the other hand, if you're looking for a Tiny Whoop simulator and you don't want to spend any money at all, Tiny Whoop Go is a really, really fantastic option. And in some ways, I feel like Tiny Whoop Go is one of the best values in this roundup because it's free and the physics are very good. And I had such a good time racing it.
One of the downsides, or one of the issues I would say with this sim, is it's almost too easy. Something I've noticed is that crashing is super forgiving, and it's basically impossible to flip your quad over, which makes it a lot of fun for people to fly and can make spec races very competitive. And you still get the edge if you're good, but it can also be a little weird if you're used to actually crashing out in a race.
Another thing that people are definitely going to notice if they download and install Tiny Whoop Go is that the interface, it feels like a CD-ROM game from the 90s. And I have to say, if you let that turn you off, you are missing out. When I first saw this game, I was like, what the F is this? What decade am I in? And as soon as I began flying it, I was like, oh, this is good. And I really, really enjoyed flying it. I would it's free. So there's no reason not to try it. I would highly recommend Tiny Whoop Go if you're into racing, whether you're into whoop racing or not. Just a very, very fun simulator. Let's give an honorable mention to something that Liftoff offers, that none of the other simulators can offer. And just to be clear, Blunty, there's Liftoff, and then there's Liftoff micro drones, which we talked about, which are two completely separate pieces of software and two separate engines. Liftoff has been out for years and is very, very mature. And the unique thing that Liftoff offers is that they modeled my house, my yard. Literally, you can fly around my house in a simulator, and it feels really accurate. The first time I flew it, I was like, this is just what it feels like to fly around my house. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think if we had done this simulator roundup, I would say maybe 6 to 8 months ago before Uncrashed released, I think Liftoff would have made our #1 freestyle simulator. And for a lot of people, this is still their core freestyle experience. You know, one of the things that they are going to use most of the time to get their flying in. So this is still a super solid simulator. There's still a decent amount of levels here. Lots of multiplayer options for freestyle and racing modes. And then also includes a track editor if you wanted to do those kind of things as well.
This is a really good simulator in almost every way. Even the physics are pretty good. I'd say the physics are above average. But it just feels like in this day and age, whatever you focus on, there's something else that edges it out slightly, especially when you consider that the price is $20, which is starting to get into the higher end. Like, would you spend $20 on Liftoff, or would you spend $20 on Velocidrone? For racing, Velocidrone, obviously. For freestyle?
It depends on if you're willing to spend that extra money for the freestyle pack.
Let's use that to segue into the category of best sim for low-spec PCs. You got a crappy, cheap PC. Maybe you don't even have like a discrete graphics card in this day and age. What simulator should people pick in that case?
FPV Freerider is going to be our choice for the lowest spec simulator. It's a very simple simulator, but of course that's what you want for a low spec simulator. There's just a few levels, basic environments, a few simple gates to fly around and racing. Just a very, very minimal package, but also very minimal on the graphics requirements.
Blunty, we should also mention there's another version of this FPV Freerider Recharged. What's it called?
Yeah, FPV Freerider Recharged. That one is kind of a sequel, but it turns out it seems to run really poorly, even on really high-spec machines, which most of us have, and doesn't have any really redeeming qualities, and it's more expensive. So I think we got hard pass on that one.
So get the original FPV Freerider, not FPV Freerider Recharged, if you're looking for a sim for low-spec PCs. Should also point out, Blunty, if you've got a low-spec PC and you're not sure, try any of the free ones on this list. It costs you nothing. And if you're buying from Steam, the Steam has a really liberal refund policy, don't they?
Yeah, basically any game can get refunded if you have 2 hours or less of playtime on that game. You just go right into the Steam store and click refund, and it'll let you refund basically automatically. They don't deny you. So any of these sims that you feel like, maybe I could run this and it seems really cool, and you want to give it a shot, you can pick that up, give it a purchase, run it for less than 2 hours just to make sure it's okay and see how it runs. And if it doesn't work for you, then return that.
2 hours and 30 days, I'm pretty sure. My kid refunds a lot of Steam games. But he's never had one denied for any reason. So as long as it's 2 hours and 30 days, you get your money back.
On the other hand, if you've got a pretty high-spec PC, you might want to take a look at the next simulator we're going to look at, the GTA 5 drone mod. And so Grand Theft Auto 5, for people who don't know, is a fairly popular video game where you go out and do various crimes and activities. And in Grand Theft Auto now, there's a mod you can add on your PC so that you can fly a drone.
Yeah, the big advantage of this, I think, is that the GTA 5 map is enormous. It's a gigantic map with so much variety for freestyle and fun flying. There's just so much you can do here. If you already own GTA 5 and you want to try it out, go right ahead. The physics aren't the best. Would you say they're middle of the road or toward the bottom of the road?
I'm going to say towards the bottom of the road, but I still think this is in the flyable category for being in cool levels. I still think we're around that bracket. So.
You know, Blunty, we spend a lot of time talking about the accuracy of the physics in a simulator. I mean, all the simulators try to have realistic physics, but what if there was a simulator where you could actually make the simulator fly just like your drone?
Yeah, so AI Drone Sim, which is the next simulator on our roundup here, actually does that. So the developer of this simulator decided, what if we actually just took the data from your quad, from your drone, and then use that to influence the simulator? And that's what it does. So this simulator will actually take your black box files from your recordings on your flight controller, and then you can import those to make a profile, and then that profile will help emulate what your quad will feel like in flight.
Well, that's pretty cool in concept, but how does it work in practice? Does it actually work, or is it just a gimmick?
Yeah, in my experience and from the feedback that I've heard from a lot of other pilots, it does actually seem to do a good job. Unfortunately, I think one of the parts where this struggles is kind of the other pieces around it. Trying to get into the UI to decide, like, is my black box even copied or not? Where has the profile been applied to? A lot of those different pieces aren't very clear. Once you get everything set up and you can get into the simulator, then it seems to fly quite well. And there's a few levels that are decent design for you to get around in. But there's a barrier to entry there of even making sure everything is set properly.
In addition, other downsides include no multiplayer, and there are racetracks in there, but it feels a lot like just it's kind of tacked on. So AI Drone Sim going to be more for if you're interested in freestyle flying, I think. The other downside is at $20, it's one on the more expensive side, and there definitely are simulators out there with a more sort of full-featured experience for $20. But the tie-in of being able to import your black box and have the quad fly kind of like your real quad is pretty cool.
Next up, we're going to take a look at the best overall value, and this is the simulator that basically seems like it has as much of the whole package as it can have at a good price that it seems fair to ask people to pay to get into simulators.
The best value simulator today, in our opinion, is the Drone Racing League Simulator, the DRL Simulator. And this is a weird one, Blunty, because DRL was originally started as it's a television show. It's on NBC, and real pilots race these quadcopters around arenas and auditoriums and compete over the series for a championship. I think they're in their third or fourth season now. And so originally, when I thought about the DRL Simulator, I thought, well, they're going to be flying the oddball quadcopter. It's like a 7-inch quadcopter that they fly on the television show. And it does that, but it's also got 5-inch quads and so forth. It's got a variety of quads you can race, a variety of levels. It's not just simulating the television show experience.
Yeah, it's also got good onboarding for new pilots. Like we talked about a little bit earlier in the Orqa FPV.Skydive section, there is basically full onboarding for new pilots here. And this actually has, like, I think it's 30 or more levels for each pilot to go through, and it steps you from a very simple to a very advanced pilot where you're doing full acro around full tracks, and it's making sure that it can help you do that. It's got easy controller setup. It kind of helps you bind everything properly. And like you mentioned, there's a variety of those drone sizes. There's also ranking tiers online. You have XP and levels. There's, like we mentioned, there's difficulty modes. There's multiplayer support with drop in, drop out. There's a track editor. There's a lot of different cool things in DRL for you to play around with.
I will say if there's a downside to this one, it's that the focus on their Racer 4 7-inch quad and their television show does distract a little bit if you're just kind of interested in 5-inch freestyle. The physics engine is definitely tailored around the Racer 4, and every time I fly their 5-inch quads, I kind of feel like it's not quite right. And a lot of the level design is focused around the kind of environments that they fly in the Racer 4. Although there definitely are some other just sort of generic freestyle levels, like there's a U.S. Air Force aircraft boneyard. One upside of the television show tie-in, though, is that they do the championships, and you can literally win a seat on the television show, including a salary, by winning a competition in the simulator.
I would also like to mention that one of the other upsides here for me was this was kind of my introduction to racing. And the focus on the 7-inch racing creates this thing we've talked about a little bit where you're basically keeping high on the throttle the entire time. And what happens is once you get to that point where you're used to throttling up and you're kind of using yaw, roll, and pitch to get through all your obstacles, you start to learn more about how track flow works and how track elements are designed and where you're cutting time while maintaining throttle. So it's literally all about just the line you're picking and maintaining momentum. And I feel like that's been a huge help for me moving over to tiny whoop racing and multi-GP racing because the same things apply in that racing as well.
I 100% agree. You figure out so much more about how a quadcopter flies, and that experience alone actually might be worth the price of admission, which is $10, but it's often on sale for less.
So that will bring us to the end of our simulator roundup list. But one more thing we wanted to mention before we go, since we are talking about simulators today, is that EdgeTX is a new software for OpenTX radios that you may or may not be familiar with. But EdgeTX 2.5 and later has a fix that you should definitely be aware of. Any OpenTX or EdgeTX radio before that version has an issue with USB latency, and it is quite high because of a bug that was in the mixer. So EdgeTX 2.5 fixes all that, and all you have to do is flash EdgeTX 2.5, and you have a much faster USB latency experience.
Yeah, don't underestimate. If you're like, eyes are glazed over at this point, and you're going, whatever, I just want to play a simulator. Please do not underestimate what a big difference this fix makes. So many people say the physics on my simulator feel terrible. And the first time Blunty and I tried a simulator with this EdgeTX fix in, we were blown away with how much better and more realistic it felt. If you're serious about simulators, then you absolutely should install EdgeTX on your radio. Of course, I have a tutorial about how to do that, and I'll put a link in the video description. I heartily encourage you to do that if you're going to be playing simulators. But that's it. That's it. Hopefully now you know the best simulator for your needs, and there are links in the video description to where you can download all of these. And for once, Blunty, they're not affiliate links. I don't have affiliates at any of these stores. Just wanted to get out there and make some good content for the community. And I sure appreciate it, man. You and I spent like probably 20 hours trying all these simulators. So I hope, and you did a lot of research as well. This video wouldn't have been the same without you.
Yeah, I hope everybody appreciates the roundup, and we can find some good options for people maybe they didn't know about, or cement the thing they liked already. So I'm happy everyone got to stay and check that out.
Yeah, me too. That's going to do it for today, though. Thank you guys so much for watching, and happy flying in the simulator this time.
Take it easy, guys.
Patrons are the people who make all this possible. Not to disrespect you, because you're watching all the way to the end, which really helps the analytics. So I guess without you watching, none of this would be possible. But if you would subscribe or join my Patreon, $2 a month or more, it's up to you. Or at the very least, leave a comment or click the affiliate links and do the show. Isn't it a beautiful day? Man, the lighting looks good out here. What's up, y'all? Out for a walk.